Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today to the Spiritist Talk series produced by the United States Spiritist Federation every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Today, I am so happy to welcome back Roberto Watanabe and to host this talk by such a wonderful guest. Roberto will be discussing the medium's book, Philosophical and Moral Consequences. But before we turn it over to Roberto, I would like to take this moment to do a very short opening prayer, if it's okay. So if we're all here together, all of you who are attending this live talk at this moment, I invite all of us together to close our eyes. Let us open our hearts. Let's connect our minds to the spirits of light, all of those who guide us and who are here with us today. They who guide us during our journey on earth. May we all be blessed. May our dear, dear friend Roberto receive the inspiration during this talk, and that all of us be touched by his words. So be it. Roberto, welcome to our talk this Saturday, just before we celebrate Thanksgiving here in the U.S. So with that, I would like to wish you a happy Thanksgiving to you and to everyone, and just hope that you and your family are doing well. We are indeed very thankful for your presence here today. Thank you so much, Roberto. Before Roberto begins his discussion, I would like to introduce him formally. Roberto Watanabe is currently the president of FESP, Spiritist Federation of São Paulo in English. He is the director of classes and courses on continuing Spiritism education. He also directs classes and courses on Spiritist philosophy. Roberto professionally has a bachelor's degree in philosophy and business. He also has an MBA from PUC in São Paulo, Brazil. Just so a friendly reminder to everyone, please don't forget to send your questions or comments using the chat window. Roberto and I have reserved some time to address those. Roberto, please, really eager to hear from you.
Hello, Marcia. Thank you for the invitation. Glad to be here again. And today we are talking about the Medium's book and the philosophical and moral consequences. So, as Marcia said, I am from the São Paulo State Spiritist Federation. And then we developed the teaching of Spiritism here in the city of São Paulo. And then also we have some social and educational tasks regarding our community. So today we are going to talk about the Medium's book, which this year we are commemorating 160 years since the book was published by Allan Kardec in 1861. And then beginning by this research from Kardec on the Spiritist manifestation, all the Spiritist doctrine was developed by him. So that's what we are going to see today. So let me start here. In the Spiritist book, Kardec says that Spiritism is presented under three different aspects. The manifestation, which is on the Medium's book. And then from those manifestations, Kardec derived the philosophical and moral principles. And this is what is written in the Spiritist book. And then after that, Kardec thought about the practical applications of those principles, of those philosophical and moral principles. That is mainly in the Gospel according to Spiritism. So we are going to have a quick overview on these three books, starting by the Medium's book, then the Spiritist book, and finally the Gospel according to Spiritism. Actually, we have here what Emmanuel says, the Spirit Emmanuel says, as the triple aspect of Spiritism: science, Book of Mediums, philosophy, the Spiritist book, and religion or moral for someone, which is the Gospel according to Spiritism. And so that's what here, right? The Spiritism triple aspect. So we are going to start with the Spiritism as a science, which is in the Medium's book. In this book here, What is Spiritism? Kardec says that Spiritism is a science that deals with the nature, origin, and destiny of the spirits. So what are the spirits? Are the discarnate beings, right? It's really, actually, they are us after we die, let's put it that way, right? Because then we remain on the spiritual world after we die. And then after that, we reincarnate again in this corporeal world. And then what Kardec studied was the spiritist world. So, and their relationship with us, which are in the corporeal world. So, therefore, Kardec says that the spiritual objective is to study the manifestation of the spirits through the mediumship, through the mediums, right? So that we are going to see that. And by establishing a relationship or connection with the spirits through the mediums, Kardec could realize their happy or unhappy conditions, their future, which is actually our happy or unhappy condition and our future, right? So in the Book of the Mediums, basically he talked to us about mediumship, the way we establish a relation with the spirits. And so spirits comprise a population, Kardec says, around us, and they are invisible in its normal state. We cannot see by our physical eyes, right? Only some mediums can see. We say the seer mediums can see the spirits, but not with the physical eyes. And they comprise the invisible world or spiritual world, as I say, right? And then by revealing this invisible world through mediumship, we can study, we can know about the relations they have with us on the visible world, and the nature and state of the beings who inhabited such a spiritual world. So in that sense, Spiritism is a true revelation of this in the scientific meaning of the word, because it is based on a methodology similar to that of science, right? It is what we are going to see here. Kardec says on the Genesis, another book he wrote in 1868, that Spiritism proceeds exactly in the same way as the positive science, applying the experimental method. So Kardec investigate the phenomena of a new order, which is the spirit manifestation, and then by observing, comparing, analyzing, he traced back the effects back to the causes. He said, right, and then he arrived at the law governing them. So one example, he researched the many spirit manifestation, and he realized that those spirits was in many levels of evolution, right? Some were very good, some were more of evil spirits, some were neither good nor bad. So there were many levels of those spirits, and then he realized that there were a love of progress. So by studying that, he got to the law, one of the moral laws, the law of progress, governing all the spirits, actually governing all of us, right? And then he deduced the consequences of those findings, right? Because if the spirit was in many level of evolution, it means that we can, by our free will, climbing this ladder, let's say, this evolution ladder or this evolution scale, right? So then we have the moral consequences. So that's what he realized utilizing the experimental method. And then in the medium's book, he started by saying that we take our departure considering that the existence, survival, and individuality of the soul, meaning that all of us, as souls, we are immortals. We existed before this incarnation. We will survive after we die, and then we will go to the spiritual world, and after some time there, we will return again. We reincarnate again on this world, and in such process we will evolve, right, as the spirits. And he says that in the phenomenon of the spirit manifestation, such phenomena provided the patent proof of the existence and survival of the soul, of ourselves as soul, as a spirit, right? Soul and spirit are the same. And then he explained that after death, the spirits, or that means we abandon our physical body, but we still keep our perispirit, which Kardec says, which is a kind of a fluidic, vaporous body. It's fluidic body which connected the soul with the physical body. So when we die, the physical body remains here on Earth, right? But we, with our perispirit, go to the spiritual world, and then we live there, right? So, and the perispirit is of a major importance to explain the mediumship, right? So the mediumistic manifestation. That's what we are going to see. And then we have the mediums, right? The person who can put us in contact with the spirits. And generally speaking, all of us are mediums because all of us are being influenced by the spirit in some way or other, right? Or another. And but in a more restricted sense, we consider the mediums only those who have a well-characterized faculty, which express through the spiritist manifestation, which we are going to see which kind of mediums we have, right? And this faculty depends on a more or less sensitive physical organization. So it means that the mediumship in some way is related to our physical organization, but is not totally, right? And the spiritist phenomenon result from which means the contact we have with the spirits depend on the combination of the personal fluids of the spirit and the medium. And it means that, the perispirit that we mentioned before, it is composed of a fluid, as we said, is a fluidic body, right? So the fluids of this perispirit and the fluid of the spirit, because the spirit has the fluidic body, the perispirit, and we also we have also our fluidic body together with the physical body, right? So the fluids of both the spirit and the medium combine, and then we have the spirited phenomena. It means that if there is no combination of the fluids of the medium and of the spirit, let's say that there is a kind of antipathy between them, then the phenomena will not occur, right? So there must be a kind of a sympathy between them. This is reflected on the combination of their personal fluids. And then having this combination, then we have two kinds of manifestations, physical and intelligent, right? And physical are those manifestations that are perceptible to the senses. For example, noises or movement of solid objects, right? I'm here in my room, and then I see some object moving to another place without someone moving that, right? It seems that the object is moving by itself, but in that case, it's a kind of a physical manifestation. We study in the medium's book that the spirit is realizing that is accomplishing that movement, and through the medium, right? And then we have the intelligent manifestation, and intelligent means that the manifestation involves an act which is freely and voluntarily accomplished, right? And review an intention. So these are the two kinds of spiritist manifestations. And then we have many, because of that, we have many varieties of mediums, right? So we have the physical effect mediums, we have the sensitive or impressionable mediums. For example, mediums who have a sensation of spirit is close to him, for example, right? And we have the hearing mediums who hear the spirits, speaking mediums through which the spirits talk to us, right? So the medium talk, but it's not the medium, it's the spirit who is utilizing, let's say, the body of the medium to talk to us. The seeing medium, as I mentioned before, those that can see the spirits. The somnambulistic medium, a healing who can cure other person, a ill person, for example, the pneumatographic medium, this is a little bit complicated, right? It's a situation where, for example, I am in an empty room, and then I hear a voice come from a corner of the room, and there is no one there, right? So this is a kind of a physical effect manifestation. Then writing, which is psychography, right? And psychographical or psychographical mediums, right? So these are the variety of the mediums. And then the mediums must develop their faculty, right? Because if a medium does not develop it, he cannot control himself, right? It's the case where, for example, a person is doing something, then suddenly he manifests a spirit manifests through him, and that is not possible when the medium develops the faculty, because in that case he controls his body, right? So the spirit will only manifest when the medium is agree with that, right? So and another thing is that in every spirit manifestation, the communication bears the personal style of the medium. So it's like if I ask someone to tell a story to another person, he will tell that story, but will also do that with his own words, right? So that's happening on the communication through the medium. And another important thing is the medium's moral, because the faculty, as we said before, is organic and therefore is independent of morality, right? So it means that the mediums can use this faculty for good or for bad, right? And that's why the morality is important here in order for the medium to use the faculty in a good, always in a good way. And also another important thing is what Kardec says, the conditions of the surroundings. It means we have, for example, a seance, a spiritist meeting. Normally there is a medium there, and also his colleague is here, right? So his colleague, the group of people who is participating in that meeting. So the intention of the people who participate in the meeting, the sentiments that they have, is important in the manifestation of the spirits. For example, if the group, everyone in the group has a serious intention to learn about the doctrine, the spiritist doctrine, for example, that will attract the elevated spirits to communicate in that meeting. On the other hand, if they are more interested on material things, for example, in that case, they will attract the low order spirits. So that's the condition of surroundings. That's why the condition of surroundings is important. And according to this situation, so we have the many nature, the many kind of communication, right? The communication may be crude, may be frivolous, serious, or instructive, depending on the medium morals and on the group's intention, right? So that's why the morality is important in mediumship. And sometimes the spiritists may identify themselves, but normally they doesn't care about that, right? Because what is important to them is to give a message, a good message, right? And by the message the spiritists tell us, we can make a distinction between good and evil spirits, right? Because, of course, a good spirit will also telling elevated things, and the opposite with evil spirit, right? And evocation. So sometimes the spirits communicate spontaneously. They are not, we don't evoke them, but they present spontaneously. And in other cases we can evoke them. So and then they answer our call, and then they become present in the meeting, right? And this evocation is important. The question that we make to them, right? Question must be a serious question, right? If we formulate question, we are interested, for example, in material issues like how to become rich, or to have a new relationship. So that kind of a thing is not appropriate for such a meeting, right? And if we do that, lower order spirit will come and will answer the question, but there is no seriousness in that communication. And the final aspect that we would like to talk about in mediumship is this important issue of obsession, right? Obsession is the influence of the spirits upon us. So there are many degrees of obsession, right? And so that's why Kardec talked to us about the simple obsession, fascination, and subjugation. So as simple obsession is, as the name says, occurs when malevolent spirits impose themselves upon mediums or upon us and interfere against their will. For example, I may be, for example, reading a book or doing some work, and then suddenly I feel sadness. I don't know from where. I have no reason for feeling such sadness or for pessimism. And then if we don't find any reason by ourselves to feel in that way, we can think about an obsession, right? A spirit here on our side trying to interfere in our thoughts in order to have us down, right? So this is a kind of a simple obsession. Fascination is more complicated because it involves a delusion created by the spirits in the thought of a medium, and that delusion paralyzes our judging capacity as mediums. For example, one example is when I think that as a medium, I just have a communication of elevated spirits, because and then even if we are lower spirits communicated through me as a medium, I believe that that lower spirit is an elevated spirit. So that's a kind of a delusion, right? So it is something worse than a simple obsession. And then we have the next stage, the constriction that causes, that the spirit causes to the victims, which is the medium, and this victim's will become paralyzed and make part of themselves. Case, for example, Kardec gives an example. Usually write on the walls with his fingers. So that's something that have no sense, right? Write on the walls with his own fingers. So in that case, he's obliged to do that, right? Because of the subjugation, the spirit subjugate him to do that. So that's a kind of more complicated case of obsession. So by the study of the mediumship, by the explanation of all these aspects regarding mediumship, Kardec is clarifying us about the method that he utilized to make in contact with the spirits. And from that many contacts that we have, not only him, but also other groups in throughout the world, which have communication with him through letters at that time, and he could then study, observe, as we said, analyze, and then get into the principles. Then we have the Spiritist book, right, which is more of a philosophical aspect of Spiritism. And there, in the conclusion, Kardec says that it would be quite erroneous to believe that the power of Spiritism derives from the practice of material manifestation. It means from the material manifestation that is studied on the Book of the Mediums. What is important in Spiritism is its philosophy, Kardec says, right? And in the appeal that it makes to reason and common sense. So that he always stressed the need to utilize our reason, right? If we, for example, receive a communication from a spirit through the medium, we need always to analyze that communication, right? The spirit can, for example, say, well, I am the Apostle Paul, for example. I am going to give you a teaching. So we would not just believe in such presentation. We must analyze the communication, the message, right? Then we will know if it's really Paul the Apostle or not, right? Or if you are, let's say, a fake spirit, right? And then in the Spiritist book, Kardec started by studying the first cause, right? So we have 4 books on the Spiritist book. In the first book, he studied the first cause. So he started by the origin of everything, which is God, right? And then there he says that God is the supreme intelligence, the first cause of all things. Right? He created all the universe. And how we can know that God exists. So then Kardec says, well, we know that every effect must have a cause, and every intelligent effect must have an intelligent cause. Well, if we look at the universe, the order, the harmony that permeates all the universe, the laws that govern the universe, we must think about a very intelligent cause, and it could not be us, right, the humans. So then going that way, we will reach the idea of God in its existence, right? And then also in the Spiritist book, Kardec talks about the attributes of God. So there he says that God is eternal because God has no beginning, has no end, right? God is beyond time. God is immutable, right? God is the absolute perfection. So if God was mutable, it would mean that he would need something which has no sense, or it would mean that he would be more or less perfect, which doesn't make any sense either, because he's the absolute perfection, right? That's why he's immutable. Kardec says that if God was not immutable, the laws that govern the universe would not be stable, right? And God is immaterial. We say that we, for example, as a spiritist, as incarnated, we have the physical body and the perispirit, the fluidic body. After we die, we leave this physical body, but we still keep the fluidic body. And this fluidic body will be with us by the eternity, right? And and this fluidic body is a kind of a material. It is a kind of a matter, right? It's not a solid matter. It's a fluidic matter, but it's matter, right? And God, there is no such kind of a fluidic body or physical body or anything of that, right? God is immaterial. And God is also one. There is only one God. He's unique. Right? God is all-powerful, because Kardec says, if God was not almighty, then we could imagine someone who which would be more powerful than God. Then that would be God, right? So that's why God is all-powerful. There is no one more powerful than Him, right? Than Him, if I can say, right? And finally, He's supremely just and good. So it is the origin of everything, right? It's our Creator. And then Kardec says that we have three elements, and actually we have two elements in the universe: spirit and matter. Spirit is us, right? Matter, for example, our body, nature, this is all matter. And then with above these two elements, spirit and matter, we have God, the Creator, right? And these three comprises the universal Trinity, as Kardec says. And the spirit, as the small s, is the intelligent principle of the universe. So we, spirit, we are individuals. We are individualization of such intelligent principle of the universe. And then between spirit and matter, we have the universal fluid, which plays an intermediary role between spirit and matter. Actually, matter comes from universal fluid. From many transformations from the universal fluid, we have matter, we have the fluidic matter, which, for example, comprises our perispirit, and we have something that we are going to see soon, which is the vital principle, right? All of these come from the universal fluid. And then next, Kardec talks about the creation. And he says that the universe was created by God, and then after that we had the formation of the living beings, for example, the plants, the animals, and then ourselves, human beings. And then there in the Spirit book, also Kardec says that there is or there are a plurality of inhabited worlds, right? So we don't have a life, right, inhabited world only on Earth. We have it also in other planets spread in the universe, right? So that's what a Spiritism says. And then here we have the vital principle. It's what differentiates between organic and inorganic beings, right? For example, a stone doesn't have any vital principle. It means it doesn't have life, right? So the mineral kingdom in general are inorganic. They don't have vital principle, or at least don't have an amount enough to have life, right? And then we have on the other side the organic beings, which is the vegetable, animal, and we humans are inside the animal, right? And on the organic beings, we have development of instinct, for example, in the animals, and then intelligence in the humans, right? So that's what Kardec is talking here on the whole issue of the first causes. Then in the second book, he talks about the world of spirits, and spirits with capital S, as I said, right? As I said, the spirits, which are ourselves, we are individualizations of the intelligent principle, the universal intelligent principle, we say, and the spirits populate the universe beyond the material world. So it is us, right? We are now incarnate here, and when after we die, we go to the spiritual world, and then we leave the material world, right? And in the spiritual world, there are different order of the spirits, and that Kardec make a scale of a 10 level of order, right? So he started by the imperfect, and he talks about the impure, which are the evil spirits, frivolous, what the name is say by itself, pseudo-learning spirits, those who think they know, but they don't, the neutral, who is neither good nor bad, and disturbing, who are involved in the physical manifestation that I mentioned before. And then we have the good spirits, right? So we have the benevolent spirits, which is the characteristic of those spirits are the kindness they have. The learned spirit, which is related to knowledge, to science, and then the wise spirit, which is related to their capacity of a judgment, so they have wisdom, right? And the high order spirits, which combine kindness, knowledge, and wisdom, right? And then above all of that, we have the pure spirits, those who does not have to reincarnate anymore. They don't have to incarnate in physical body anymore like us. They keep only their fluidic body and very subtle, and they reach a state of purity that we are going to reach only in the far future, right? Jesus is one example of a pure spirit. And then after that, Kardec talks about the process of incarnation of the spirit. And then there he says that we are created simple and ignorant, all of us, and destined to perfection. And we do that through reincarnation, right? And there also he talks about the parts of the human being, right? Body, soul, and perispirit, as I mentioned. And after we reincarnate, we die, right? And then we return to the spirit life, to the spirit world. We leave the corporeal and goes to the spiritual world. And there we stay in a condition of what he says as an errant spirit. And we can stay in such condition from a few hours to 1,000 of a century, depending on the how we are attached to this material world, right? So the more attached we are, the less time we remain on the spiritual world. And what do we do there in the spiritual world, right? So that's something that people may ask sometimes. Well, in the spiritual world, we study, we work, we do the things that we have to do. So we have a life, or another kind of a life, another dimension of a life, another realm, right, of life. But we continue to evolve, right? And in that spiritual world, there are sympathies and antipathies among spirits, like we have here in the corporeal world, right? And then after some times in the spiritual world, we return to corporeal life. We reincarnate, right? And the reincarnation is the union of the soul with the body, through the perispirit. And such a union begins at the conception and completes at the moment of birth, nine months after we are conceived, right? And in this process, we forget about our past, right? So that's why Kardec says here about the forgetfulness of the past. That's very important, because by forgetting what we were or we have done before, we can start again, right? Starting over in a more easy situation, right? Suppose, for example, that if I was a criminal on the last incarnation, right? Remember that it would for sure would cause a problem for me today to evolve, right? Because I would be remember of those bad things that I did in the past. Or, for example, suppose that I am incarnated here in a very difficult situation, materially speaking, and then I remember that there was a noble or a king or something like that in the past. It would be much difficult to accept the situation today. So that's why we forget of the past. And also, if we forget about our enemies of the past, we can find them in this present incarnation, and then we can reconcile with them, right? By forgetting what we did or what they did to us in the past. And so reincarnation is very important to the process of evolution of the spirits, and the purpose is the expiation on our situation, right? We are a spirit which lives in a world of expiation and trials and expiation. So expiation and progressive improvement is very important to us, and reincarnation is a way to do that, right? And if we forget about the past, we have the innate ideas, right? We have a vague memory from our previous life. We have the tendency, right? We have the intuitions of what we were in the past. So, and then even if you are incarnated here in this material world, it doesn't mean that we are stuck to this situation, right? We can release ourselves from our physical body in some situations. So that situation is what Kardec talks to us, and he defined it as emancipation of the soul. For example, when we sleep, and only the body must rest, right, from the day work. The soul does not, or the spirit does not need to rest, because there is no material, some hard material, let's say, right? So when we sleep, spirit can release from his body, always connected to through a fluidic cord, and the spirit comes and goes to the spiritual world, and can participate in meetings, can do whatever it is interest from him. Right? And dreams are a kind of fragmented memory of what we did during this our time of sleep, right, as a spirit. And then we have another cases of emancipation, like lethargy, for example, is a kind of when the movement and the sensations are paralyzed. Lethargy, the whole body is paralyzed and without any motion. Catalepsy is a partial paralyzation, right? And then we have somnambulism, when the person is sleeping, but then he commands his own body, and he walks, he do things, and he's not aware of that, right? When he wake up, he doesn't remember for what he did. So this is the kind of somnambulism. And ecstasy, when the spirit goes to, let's say, heavenly dimensions, right? And the second sight, which is the case when the seer medium, for example, that can see the spirits, or in some situation, the soul or the spirit of the incarnate person can look through time, for example, through things that happened in the far past, in the past, but centuries ago, or can have some glimpses of the future, or also the local situation where the spirit is here in São Paulo, for example, and the medium is here in São Paulo, and he can see something happening in London, for example, right? So this is a kind of a second sight, is emancipation of the soul, because the spirit goes to London and sees something there, right, with his perispirit. The body stays here, right? So that wise is a kind of emancipation. The soul releases from his body and goes everywhere, right? And then another important thing that Kardec talks about is the intervention of the spirit in the corporeal world. So the influence that they have on us, and also we have influence on them, right? So this is what is studied in this part of the book. And he also talks about the protector spirit, so the guardian angel, right? Which we learn if we were Catholic in the past. In Spiritism, we call them the protector spirits. Are the spirits personal spirit that we have as someone who is taking care of us during all our incarnation, right? So he remains there in the spiritual world and help us to go through our incarnation here. So that's very important to us to stay connected to them, right? And then in the third part of the spiritual book, Kardec says about the moral laws, because we have the physical, that God established the physical laws who govern matter, and also the moral laws who govern the spirit, right? We. So the moral laws are written, Kardec says, in the conscience. So we have in our conscience, we have already the idea of a truth, of a justice, of love, of a good, of a beauty. So all of that is on our conscience, right? So that is a treasure that we have inside ourselves, and that we must find by evolving in a spiritual sense. And then these laws is directly related to morality, right? And then that's why Kardec said, what is good, what is evil, right? Or what is bad. Good is everything that is in harmony with the God's law, with the divine law, right? And evil is everything that deviates from such a God's law, right? From it. And then we have the maximum of loving one's neighbor that Jesus said to us. So Kardec says that it's such a maximum is too general, right? It leaves many doors open to interpretation. So to be more specific, Kardec proposed it to the spiritists, and that was accepted, to divine the moral law in 10 laws, right? So that was the law of worship, and worship God, for, of course, the law of labor, because we must through labor, we must taking care of our survival, the law of reproduction, through which humanity will keep it alive in our earth, the preservation of our life, and the destruction, which is sometimes necessary to have a renewal of things, and the law of society, because there is such a reciprocal dependence among all of us, right? The law of progress that I have already mentioned, and then the law of equality. We are all sons of the same Heavenly Father. The law of liberty, which is directly connected to free will. And finally, the law of justice, love, and charity. And Kardec says that this last law comprises all the others. So that's what we studied in the third part, and he concluded the third part by some topics regarding moral perfection. And then there he talks about virtue, about passions, about the vices, selfishness as a source of all evil. And he talks about what is a moral person, that one who practices the law of justice, love, and charity that we just saw. And the importance of knowing ourselves, right? The know thyself, because by knowing ourselves, we will find that divine laws that are in our conscience. So, and from that way, we can control our passions, we can develop virtues, and we can delete, let's say, the vices from our being, right? And then the fourth book, Kardec is talking about hopes and consolation. In the first book, which he talks about God, matter, spirit, he develops that on the book of Genesis. And here, the hopes and consolations, where he talks about earthly joys and sorrow and future joys and sorrows, we can see this developed on another book, the Heaven and Hell, right? All of them from Kardec. So here in Hope and Consolation, we talked about the standard for happiness, for material existence is the possession of its necessary, for a moral life, a good conscience and faith in the future. He explains something very important, which is about the predominance of the wicked on our earth. And it is interesting because the Spiritist answer to him that the problem is that the good are not assertive, they are timid, right? So that's why the wicked predominates in our world. And that happens in this world today, right? But the moment the good want to, the Spirit says, they will prevail. So that's very interesting. And then also they talk about sorrows. The sorrows depend on our side, because if we have a loss of loved ones, it is different if we think that we will never see them again, or if we have a conscience that they still live in another dimension. So sorrow depends on what we think about that, right? And also with other situations, appointments, antipathetic union, fear of death, and suicide, right? And future joys and sorrow, and then here the accepting the future or the future life is something very important, because materialism is related to idea of nothingness, right? After we die, everything is over, right? That's what materialism says. Well, if that's the case, then what I would do in this present incarnation, I would fight for have everything that I need, everything that I want, no matter what happens to others. And well, selfishness would be strictly related, directly related to this idea of nothingness or materialism, right? And by the other hand, by accepting the idea of the future life, then we have another understanding, right, of our present life. So then we know that all the wrong that we do today and we intentionally cause today will have a consequence in the future. All the good that we may have, we may do today, but we don't, will have a consequence in the future. And all the evil that result from a good that I failed to do now will have a consequence in the future. So that's a very different situation, very different standpoint that we have regarding our present life. So that's what is we are talking here, right? We are not actually doing about the future, but we are doing about what is important for our present life now, right? And so that's what we have here. And then we close Kardec close here the Spiritist book. Here is something that we have in Genesis and the heaven and hell, that books that I mentioned, right? That in the Genesis he says that happiness or unhappiness is inherent of a degree of to the degree of a perfection or imperfection that we have, right? And then on the heaven and hell book, Kardec showed to us many communication of its spirits in many situations, right? On that evolutionary scale. So we have happy spirit, who is on the top of the scale. We have average spirits, which are not good nor bad. We have suffering spirits, who is in a low part of the scale, and the suicides, repentant criminals, hardened spirits, and earthly spirits. You see that most of us are on the low order, right? Or low order part of the scale. So that is the situation of a planet of trials and expiation, right? And then let's go now to the Gospel according to Spiritism, which is the practical applications of the principles that we just saw in the Spiritist book. And then we will just go through some points here. The fundamentals of the Gospel is obviously is based on Jesus' teachings, right? And so we have the most important is the greatest commandment, right, from Jesus, which is to love God with all our heart, with all our soul, and with all our mind. And then the second commandment is to love our neighbor as ourselves, right? So this is from Jesus. And another important thing regarding the practical application is faith, right? Faith is this divine inspiration from God, Kardec said, right? Because faith can move mountains of our difficulties, our bad will, and our resistance to do good things, right? And faith is from faith we have hope in charity as a consequence. So here we have also a kind of a trinity, right? Faith, hope, and charity. Someone have faith, have hope if he before that he must have faith. Someone has a terrible behavior. Before that, he must have faith, right? So, and then Kardec says about the rational faith, which is the faith in the spiritism, right? And the faith that believes in God, believes in justice, but thinking about that, right? Thinks about that, and not just believe, but also thinking, but use the reasoning, right? So that's why he says that unshakable faith is the kind that can stand face to face with the reason, right, in all human epochs. Next important thing is prayer, right? Is on the chapter of the Gospel where Kardec, whose title is "Ask and you shall receive." It's something that Jesus said, right? So prayer is a kind of invocation, right? We can request something to God, we can acknowledge it as something that we have received, or we can glorify God, right? Worship God. So through prayer, we can attract to us the help of good spirits. They are not going to do what we must have to do, but we will help us with the good thoughts, to good directions, and to inspire us to go through the difficult of our lives, right? So that's why prayer is very important. And if we are going to talk about it, loving God about all things, if we are talking about faith, if we are talking about prayer, we are talking about a religion, right? So that's why I stressed here this point, because there are there are some colleagues that understand that Spiritism is not a really religion, like Emmanuel said, right? It's just a moral. Well, morality doesn't talk about prayer, doesn't talk about faith, and it doesn't talk about loving God about everything, or loving our neighbor, right? About forgetting the offenses, about reconciling with our adversaries, right? Or not judging our neighbor. So this is something which goes beyond ethic and moral. So that I would like to stress here, right? So and then the main message of Jesus is love, right? So that's why in the Gospel, according to Spiritism, Kardec says about moral charity and material charity. Material charity helps in the material aspect, right? And moral charity is consists in giving support, as he says, to one another, to listen to someone who is going through a difficult situation, to teaching people about the spiritual doctrine, for example, to help people, to giving good advices. So, and we should do all of that, as Jesus said, as he said, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. So we should do all this moral natural charity with the disinterested from anything from our side, right? We do that for moral by moral itself. So that's what Jesus wanted to say here. I also mentioned here about the forgiving offenses, reconciling with the adversary, and not judging, right? Our neighbor. And also Jesus also talks about loving our enemies, right? So it's not having tenderness to them, because that would presuppose trust, but forgiving them, not setting any obstacle to reconciliation, wanting them good, vibrating for them instead of wishing them evil, right? So this is how we should love our enemies. And so let's just go to the final remarks, and we would like to mention here what we mentioned in the beginning, right? Why we think that Spiritism is science, philosophy, and religion? Because we follow what the Emmanuels, right? The Spirit Emmanuels, said, well, in the book The Consoler. And there he says that we can take Spiritism as a triangle of spiritual forces. So it's forces, right? So science and philosophy is in the base of this triangle. It's connected to Earth, right? It's in the base. And this science and philosophy bind this symbolic figure, this triangle, to the Earth. But the religion is on the top of this triangle, is the divine angle, the Emmanuel says, that binds it to heaven. So science and philosophy is an horizontal, right? It's on earth, is what we study here. Human deeds, culture, everything that we do here. Earth is, religion is related, is a vertical direction, right? Directed to God. So that's this triangle, that this strong image that Emmanuel gave to us. And so that he says that in the scientific and philosophical aspect, the Spiritist doctrine is always be a noble field of human investigation, so here on the earth, right? But in the religion aspect lies his divine greatness, because it constitutes the restoration of the gospel of Jesus, establishing the definitive renewal of man. So religion is very important. It's on the top here, right? So that's the Emmanuel triangle, the way he sees Spiritism. And from this point of view, we can understand how Spiritism is complex and difficult to study and to absorb, right? But well, we have the eternity to do that. So that's what I would like to present today about the medium book and the philosophical and moral consequence. Would like to thank you for having me today, and I'm open now for any question or comments you may have. Thank you.
Wow, Roberto, you provide an overview of so many concepts contained in the Spiritist body of work, right? So thank you. I believe we have a few minutes before we conclude our talk today. Let's see if we have received any questions or comments from the audience. And for those who have not sent your question or comments, please note that we are open to receive your comments. So Paul Jacoby, hi Paul. Roberto, he's asking, does the intervention of spirits in the corporeal world often place us in better position for spiritual growth when we exercise free will?
Yes, depend on how we exercise the free will, right? Because, for example, we say that the spirit influences us, but also that we influence them, because we have this connection to them through our thought, right? So actually, when we talk about obsession, for example, that I mentioned in the book, the Medium's book, what is obsession? Is a bad influence of a spirit upon me. But why that happened? Because that happens because I put myself in a situation to have such influence. So our thinking, our thoughts are the main things to establish if I'm going to be helped by a good spirit, or will be, let's say, helped in a evil way by a bad spirit, by an evil spirit, right? So this is that's why free will is important. For example, if we have a good intention, we try to evolve, to study, to understand, to help other people. And in that, if I have such kind of a mindset, then I will attract good spirits. And then in that case, I would say to Paul, yes, and in that case, spirit will help us to grow, right? But if I think the other way, then I will attract low order spirits. And in that case, they will not help. They actually will help me to go down and not to elevate myself. But the main thing is all of that depends strictly on me, right? So we are not on the spirit cannot affect me the way they want in every time, right? Depending on my situation, my thought, my thinking, my thought. I don't know if you was clear about that, but that is what I would like to
I think it
answer.
was. For me, it was. I hope it was for you, Paul.
Mm.
So let's see if there's another question. Yes, Paula. Hi, Paula.
Mm.
She asked, if we're studying spiritists in this life, does our spirit continue to study while our bodies sleep at night and after we return home?
Yes, for sure, Paula. That's what issue that Kardec developed in the second part of the spiritual book, when where he called about the emancipation of the soul. So that's the same situation that I just answered to Paul, right? So I go to sleep. So what I should do? What I should do every night when I go to sleep? I should not before sleep to watch, for example, a violent movie, for example, right? I should read a book, the gospel, or any book that elevates my thought. I should make a prayer before I sleep, and then when I sleep, my soul, as I said, my spirit leaves the body because it doesn't need to rest, and then I go to look for what is interesting for me. If I prepared for that, doing what I just mentioned, for sure I will go probably meeting some study group in the spiritual world, and seeing there what we are studying here, but we don't have much vision of that, because we talk about this perispirit, we talk about the spiritual world, we talk about many things, but we don't watch really, right? So in this moment of emancipation, when we sleep, we can have this opportunity to meet not only our incarnate colleagues, which also go there, but also our discarnate colleagues, right? And then we can study, we can work. I think André Luiz, Spirit, says that sometimes we realize after we die, we find there on the spiritual dimension the conclusion of tasks, jobs that we have done when we were incarnate here, that we did during this sleeping time. So you see, the soul is never inactive, right? So in that depends on us, always on us.
Awesome explanation. Thank you, Roberto. We have another question I think you may have answered, but we can explore it further. Roberto, you mentioned spirits are us after we die, but what about before we die?
Well, after after we die, as I said, we leave our physical body. Well, the physical body remain on earth, right? Then we as soul or spirits with our perispirit or fluidic body, we go to the spiritual world, to the spiritual dimension. And then, as I said, we continue our activities on the other dimension, right? We can study, we can work, we can do many things. We can find those who went before us, for our grandfather, for example, or some parents, some colleagues, some friends that went before, and we can get in contact with those who remained here on Earth. So, but we are there with our fluidic body, our perispirit. And then what happened? What is our situation before we are born here on Earth? We are exactly the state of the same situation where we will be after we die. Before we were born here on Earth, we were in the spiritual world. We were there with our perispirit or fluidic body. And when at the moment of a conception, as we briefly saw here, when you have the conception from our parents, at that moment, we as spirit, with our fluidic body, we connected to that being, right? That living being, which was conceived there. And then after 9 months, we is born, right? To a new incarnate. So before being born, we were spirit, right? So with the spiritual body. When we incarnate, we are soul with the spiritual body connected to a physical body from our parents, right? Parents. And after we die, we leave our physical body and we will return to the situation we were before we were born, right? We as soul connected to our perispirit, and that is a cycle, right? Then we reincarnate again, then we born, we die, and then we reborn. So that's through that process we evolve, right? So that is the situation. That's why we say in the spiritism that the soul not just survived death, right? But the soul pre-existed the birth, right? So we are kind of going through these two dimensions, right? Corporeal world and the spiritual world, going. Let's say up and down, right? So all the time.
That's awesome. It's such a sense of consolation, right?
Yeah.
So anyways, we have another question here for you from the U.S. Spiritist Federation page. Physical manifestations are often scary. Movies exploring this topic can sometimes fall under the horror movie genre. Should we consider physical manifestations of spirits to be bad?
No. Physical manifestation. No, I agree that the physical manifestations are scary because, like I said, right? Suppose that I'm here at night reading a book, and suddenly something starts to move by itself, or that's scary. Or I hear some noises, but there is no one in the room, so it's a kind of scary. I agree. But that doesn't mean that spirits that do such kind of a manifestation are bad, right? Because they are actually, when we saw that scale of the spirit on the spiritist book, they are on the middle. They are on the top of the impure spirit. They are what Kardec says, the disturbing spirits. Those who are involved on the physical manifestation. They are not good nor bad, right? So normally they are kind of instrument of other spirits who have ascendancy over them, right? But it doesn't mean that they are bad, and sometimes even they even can be a kind of a good manifestation. Kardec himself has give us an example of this on the Posthumal Works, which is the last book that was published from the Spiritism. It was not published by him, right? That's why it's published Posthumal Works. So in the posthumous works, Kardec says one situation that he was writing a text, an article of spiritism, and then suddenly he hears some noises. Someone is knocking on the window, right, on his room. And then he looks there, well, he goes there, well, maybe it's the wind, well, but there is no wind. So what is this noise here, right? So then he forget about that and continue to write, right? And then on the next day, he through a medium and on the Paris Spirit Society, he evoked the spirit, and then he asked him, what was the reason of that noise the night before, right? And then the spirit says, well, I was trying to alert you, to give you to alert you that you were writing something that was not correct. So go back on what you wrote on that part of the text, and analyze that. And then he goes back, and then he sees that he had written something that was not correct, and then he corrected, right? So that situation was a physical manifestation, but it was for good, not for bad, and not done for bad spirit, right?
In a very silly way, I keep thinking of that movie from the mid-'80s, Ghost, right? Where the husband is desperately trying to alert the wife, and so it's not so bad after all. But thank you for explaining that. We have another question from the U.S. Spiritist Federation page, and the question says, it seems that the recommendation to study the content of spiritual messages is similar to our experience reading a message in social media and taking it as truth, meaning accepting it as truth without any questioning or confirmation of its veracity. Are there best ways in which we can do that relative to a spiritual message?
Well, the recommendation for Kardec was always to utilize our reason and common sense, right? So that's what he said. Well, every message that you read, well, it can apply to messaging in social media and in the social social media, and everything that we read or take a look, we should apply our reason and common sense, and not believe the example that I gave you. For example, a spirit communicating said, well, I am Saint Augustine, right? So, and then you by being impacted from that information, you believe in anything that the spirit says, right? So Kardec said, no, don't do that, right? So always analyze, because he says, actually, the identity of the communicating spirit is not important. What is important is the message, right? So we should always utilize this reason and common sense, not only on the communication of the spirit, but in everything in our life, right? Especially especially in these days of fake news, right?
It's hard everywhere, now and then, right?
Yeah.
So thank you for the answer, Roberto. Let's see if we have another question. Glaucio, hi Glaucio. Glaucio is asking us, we can pray to ask, thank, and praise God. Why is the point in praying just to praise a God who is the supreme intelligence in the universe?
That is an interesting question. That's a kind of a question that people always raise, right? Because if God is supreme intelligence of the universe, is almighty, all powerful, well, he doesn't need we to pray to him, right? Actually, Glaucio, that's something interesting, because to praise to God actually is more important to us than to him, right? That's something very important. For example, the other day I was talking about the parable of the how do you can say parábola do filho pródigo?
The prodigal son's parable.
The prodigal son, prodigal son parable, right? So you see, in that situation, Jesus says that the prodigal son left the house of the father. So what we can think in that situation, that God is always with us, and with his infinite love, right, to us. If we don't feel God, it's not that God is gone far away from us, but it's we that went far away from God. So that is what the parable of the prodigal son says, right? So it's the son that leaves the father's house. So it means that Glaucio is right. God is not doesn't need anything from us, but we need to stay close to Him in many ways, right? And by praying is let's say, to acknowledge, to recognizing this gift of a life that He gives us. This He gives us life, but He gives us intelligence. He gives us the opportunity to evolve and to getting close to Him, and to be happy, to fulfill all our potentiality that we have. So we are thankful for all that, for the universe, for the world, for our families, for our work, for the opportunity to stay here in the Spiritism, to clarify our minds about the true meaning of life. So praying is all of that, right? It's recognizing this. So actually, God doesn't need that, but we need to do that, right? Because that way we get close to Him.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think we have time for one more question. So, hi, Daniel. Daniel Santos gave us this message. Roberto, what are your thoughts about the Spiritist teachings becoming mainstream in the future? For example, accepted by all religions?
That's a very interesting question, Daniel, because there is a saying that well, people say that Leon Denis said that, but well, I didn't find something like that, but I find something similar on the problem of life and destiny, a book of Leon Denis, right, a Spiritist from what was from Kardec's time, after Kardec. So there, Leon Denis says that Spiritism will not be the religion of the future, but Spiritism will be the future of all religions. How can we understand that? We can understand that it is not the case. It will not be the case that one day all the world will be will be Spiritist, right? All the human beings will be Spiritist. But it means that what Spiritist, the principle that Spiritists defend now, which is, what is the basic principle of Spiritism? God, immortality of the soul, the love of progress, the communication between the corporeal and the spiritual world. All these, the main principles that the Spiritism now having as its basic concepts, will be adopted by the other religions. Actually, most of these principles are already accepted by the Eastern religion, right? If you go to Hinduism, to Buddhism, to well, they accept already the reincarnation, all such things, right? So God, right? So what we can say is that the Spiritists teachings or principles will be accepted by other religions, that they remain other religions with other names, but the principles will be accepted. So that's what we can say, right, about the Spiritist teachings.
Absolutely. Many thanks to you and to everyone who's been here, right? We see some comments from Paula and all, but we are coming close to an end. And I just wanted to say thank you, Roberto. Thank you, everyone who was able to be here during this live talk. For those of you who have been following us weekly talks. And please note that next Saturday, which is, I believe, November 27th, again at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, please don't miss this special edition of our live talk series with the topic Guidelines to Virtual Mediumship Activities. So I think it's piggybacked from your topic. A lot of information today, Roberto, on the Medium's book will be worked further next week. So this topic was originally produced by the International Spiritist Council. Next week, we'll have a roundtable discussion with Jean Cohen-Gold, Leonardo Vieira, and Glaucio Pessoa. So with that, Roberto, I would like, if you don't mind, before we close the live session, if you can please say a prayer.
Yes, sure.
Thank you.
Thank you for this opportunity to be here with you, and hope to be in some future opportunity. So let's now thank you, the spiritual benefactors, for all the support we had during this meeting today to talk about the Spiritism in its triple aspect, and thanking Jesus for this opportunity regarding of the imperfection that we still have, and that are many, the opportunity to work in this for the divulgation of his gospel through the Spiritism doctrine. Finally, we thank God for the gift of life, for creating us to be relatively perfect, and to going forward to the brotherhood, fraternity, to liberty, to love each other, and by loving each other, loving him, as John the Apostle said. So thank you for this opportunity. So be it.
So be it. Thank you. Have a great weekend.